صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. اعوذ باللہ من الشیطان الرجیم. بسم اللہ الرحمن الرحیم. عن جابر بن عبد اللہ الانصاری عن فاطمة الزہراء علیہ السلام بنت رسول اللہ صلی اللہ علیہ وآلہ قال سمعت فاطمة أنها قالت دخل علي أبي رسول الله في بعض الأيام فقال السلام عليك يا فاطمة فقلت عليك السلام قال إني أجد في بدني ضعفا فقلت له أعيذك بالله يا أبتاه من الضعف فقال يا فاطمة ائتيني بالكساء اليماني فغطيني به فأتيته بالكساء اليماني فغطيته به وصرت أنظر إليه وإذا وجهه يتلألأ كأنه البدر في ليلة تمامه وكماله. اللهم صل على فما كانت إلا ساعة وإذا بولدي الحسن قد أقبل وقال السلام عليك يا أماه فقلت وعليك السلام يا قرة عيني وثمرة فؤادي فقال يا أماه إني أشم عندك رائحة طيبة كأنها رائحة جدي رسول الله فقلت نعم إن جدك تحت الكساء فأقبل الحسن نحو الكساء وقال السلام عليك يا جداه يا رسول الله أتأذن لي أن أدخل معك تحت الكساء فقال وعليك السلام يا ولدي ويا صاحب حوضي قد أذنت لك فدخل معه تحت الكساء. فما كانت إلا ساعة وإذا بولدي الحسين قد أقبل وقال السلام عليك يا أماه فقلت وعليك السلام يا ولدي ويا قرة عيني وثمرة فؤادي فقال لي يا أماه إني أشم عندك رائحة طيبة كأنها رائحة جدي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وقلت نعم إن جدك وأخاك تحت الكساء فدنا الحسين نحو الكساء وقال السلام عليك يا جداه يا السلام عليك يا من اختاره الله أتأذن لي أن أكون معكما تحت الكساء فقال وعليك السلام يا ولدي ويا شافع أمتي قد أذنت لك فدخل معهما تحت الكساء. وآل محمد. فأقبل عند ذلك أبو الحسن علي بن أبي طالب وقال السلام عليك يا بنت رسول الله فقلت عليك السلام يا أبا الحسن ويا أمير المؤمنين فقال يا فاطمة إني أشم عندك رائحة طيبة كأنها رائحة أخي وابن عمي رسول الله فقلت نعم ها هو مع ولديك تحت الكساء فأقبل علي نحو الكساء وقال السلام عليك يا رسول الله أتأذن لي أن أكون معكم تحت الكساء قال له عليك السلام يا أخي ويا وسيي وخليفتي وصاحب لوائي قد أذنت لك فدخل علي تحت الكساء. اللهم صل على محمد. ثم أتيت نحو الكساء وقلت السلام عليك يا أبتاه يا رسول الله أتأذن لي أن أكون معكم تحت الكساء قال وعليك السلام يا بنتي ويا بضعتي قد أذنت لك فدخلت تحت الكساء فلما اكتملنا جميعا تحت الكساء أخذ أبي رسول الله بطرف الكساء وأومى بيده اليمنى إلى السماء وقال: اللهم إن هؤلاء أهل بيتي وخاصتي وحامتي، لحمهم لحمي ودمهم دمي، يؤلمني ما يؤلمهم ويحزنني ما يحزنهم. أنا حرب لمن حاربهم، وسلم لمن سالمهم، وعدو لمن عاداهم، ومحب لمن أحبهم. إنهم مني وأنا منهم، فاجعل صلواتك وبركاتك ورحمتك وغفرانك ورضوانك علي وعليهم، واذهب عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. وقال الله عز وجل: يا ملائكتي ويا سكان سماواتي، إني ما خلقت سماء مبنيا ولا أرضا مدحيا ولا قمرا منيرا ولا شمسا مضيا ولا فلكا يدور ولا بحرا يجري ولا فلكا يسري إلا في محبة هؤلاء الخمسة الذين هم تحت الكساء. فقال الأمين جبرائيل: يا ربي ومن تحت الكساء؟ وقال عز وجل: هم أهل بيت النبوة ومعادن الرسالة، هم فاطمة وأبوها وبعلها وبنوها. فقال جبرائيل: يا ربي أتأذن لي أن أهبط إلى الأرض ليكون معهم سادسا؟ فقال الله: نعم، قد أذنت لك. فهبط الأمين جبرائيل وقال: السلام عليك يا رسول الله. العلي العالى يقرئك السلام ويخصك بالتحية والإكرام، ويقول لك: وعزتي وجلالي إني ما خلقت سماء مبنيا ولا أرضا مدحيا ولا قمرا منيرا ولا شمسا مضيا ولا فلكا يدور ولا بحرا يجري ولا فلكا يسري إلا لأجلكم ومحبتكم. وقد أذن لي أن أدخل معكم، فهل تأذن لي يا رسول الله؟ وقال رسول الله: وعليك السلام يا أمين وحي الله. إنه نعم، قد أذنت لك. فدخل جبرائيل معنا تحت الكساء. فقال لأبي: إن الله قد أوحى إليكم يقول: إنما يريد الله ليذهب عنكم الرجس أهل البيت ويطهركم تطهيرا. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. وقال علي لأبي: يا رسول الله، أخبرني ما لجلوسنا هذا تحت الكساء من الفضل عند الله. وقال النبي: والذي بعثني بالحق نبيا واصطفاني بالرسالة نجيا، ما ذكر خبرنا هذا في محفل من محافل أهل الأرض، وفيه جمع من شيعتنا ومحبينا، إلا ونزلت عليهم الرحمة وحفت بهم الملائكة واستغفرت لهم إلى أن يتفرقوا. فقال علي: إذا والله فزنا وفاز شيعتنا ورب الكعبة. فقال النبي ثانيا: يا علي، والذي بعثني بالحق نبيا واصطفاني بالرسالة نجيا، ما ذكر خبرنا هذا في محفل من محافل أهل الأرض، وفيه جمع من شيعتنا ومحبينا، وفيهم مهموم إلا وفرج الله همه، ولا مغموم إلا وكشف الله غمه، ولا طالب حاجة إلا وقضى الله حاجته. فقال علي: إذا والله فزنا وسعدنا، وكذلك شيعتنا فازوا وسعدوا في الدنيا والآخرة ورب الكعبة. اللہم صلی علی محمد. ایک سورہ فاتحہ برائے بانیان مجلس.
صلوات. یا مرتضی مجھے دنیا کا غم نہ ہو، لیکن غم حسین میرے دل سے کم نہ ہو. یا مرتضی مجھے دنیا کا غم نہ ہو، لیکن غم حسین میرے دل سے کم نہ ہو. خوشیوں سے دور ہو کر جیتا رہوں گا مولا، اس غم سے دور ہو کر جی نہ سکوں گا مولا. کوئی خوشی نصیب میں چاہے رقم نہ ہو، لیکن غم حسین میرے دل سے کم نہ ہو. وہ دن بھی جل گیا دو جہاں کے صاحب، روکا ہوا نہ جب سے کربلا کی جانب. اتنا چلوں کہ بس میری سانسوں میں دم نہ ہو، لیکن غم حسین میرے دل سے کم نہ ہو. مشکل کشا تمہیں کو میں مانگتا ہوں مولا، سب پر کرم کیا ہے یہ جانتا ہوں مولا. بے شک میری حیات میں کوئی کرم نہ ہو، لیکن غم حسین میرے دل سے کم نہ ہو. یا مرتضی مجھے دنیا کا غم نہ ہو، لیکن غم حسین میرے دل سے کم نہ ہو. چاہے جوان لاشا بے کے کا میں اٹھاؤں، یا گے حسین لے کر میت پہ اس کی جاؤں. چلیں گے کتاب ختم ہو اٹھا قدم نہ ہو، لیکن غم حسین میرے دل سے کم نہ ہو. یا مرتضی مجھے دنیا کا غم نہ ہو، لیکن غم حسین میرے دل سے کم نہ ہو. شابیر کے لیے ہی مانگا تھا میں نے غازی، ام البنی کے لب پر بس ایک یہ دعا تھی. جب تک جیوں مجھے میرے غازی کا غم نہ ہو، لیکن غم حسین میرے دل سے کم نہ ہو. ریحان اعظمی کہنے لگے رضا سے، رو رو کے آج میں نے مانگا ہے مرتضی سے. دنیا میں میرے نام کا چاہے برم نہ ہو، لیکن غم حسین میرے دل سے کم نہ ہو. یا مرتضی مجھے دنیا کا غم نہ ہو، لیکن غم حسین میرے دل سے کم نہ ہو. صلوات.
ایک بلند تر صلوات ایک دفعہ. اجازت مولانا صاحب. سبت جعفر صاحب کا ایک مشہور کلام اپنے خدمت میں. اور مجھے کوئی غم نہیں ہے مگر اے حسین تیرا. مجھے کوئی غم نہیں ہے مگر اے حسین تیرا. اور میری فکر کی ہے منزل سفر ہے حسین تیرا. اور مجھے کوئی غم نہیں ہے مگر اے حسین تیرا. وہ کیا جب تھا گھیر لیتی مجھے ہر طرح کی فکریں. کیا جب تھا گھیر لیتی مجھے ہر طرح کی فکریں. نہ جو غم رفیق ہوتا اگر اے حسین تیرا. اور کبھی کفر کے مقابل تو کبھی منافقوں کے رہا سر بکف ہمیشہ پدر اے حسین تیرا. اور اسے اپنے خون سے تو نے نئی زندگی عطا کی. اور اسے اپنے خون سے تو نے نئی زندگی عطا کی. یہ ہے یہ دین مصطفیٰ کا شجر حسین تیرا. ہے یہ دین مصطفیٰ کا شجر حسین تیرا. اور نہ امیر شام باقی نہ وہ تاج و تخت شاہی. نہ امیر شام باقی نہ وہ تاج و تخت شاہی. ہے دلوں پہ اب بھی لیکن اثر حسین تیرا. ہے دلوں پہ اب بھی لیکن اثر حسین تیرا. اور کسی ملاحظہ اور کسی حکمراں کا صدقہ نہ مبلغوں کی کوشش. کسی حکمراں کا صدقہ نہ مبلغوں کی کوشش. ہے یہ دین کی بہاریں ثمر حسین تیرا. اوے جنا کے شاہزادے تو زمین پہ آ گیا کیوں. اوئے ہوئے اے جنا کے شاہزادے تو زمین پہ آ گیا کیوں. کہ مسلسل ابتلا ہے سفر حسین تیرا. اور کبھی دوش پر نبی کے کبھی نوک پر انی کے. اور کبھی دوش پر نبی کے کبھی نوک پر انی کے. رہا اوج پر ہمیشہ قمر حسین تیرا. اور ہوئی کہکشاں سی روشن سر راہ شام و کوفہ. ہوئی کہہ کشاں سی روشن سر راہ شام و کوفہ گیا سر بنو کے نیزہ جدھر ہے حسین تیرا. شعر ملاحظہ ہو. نہ تو آنکھ پر ہے پٹی نہیں ہاتھ میں ہے راشا. نہ تو آنکھ پر ہے پٹی اور نہیں ہاتھ میں ہے راشا. تو خلیل دیکھتے ہیں جگر حسین تیرا. اور کیا جب تھا پائے اصغر سے ابلتا خون کا چشمہ. وہ کیا جب تھا پائے اصغر سے ابلتا خون کا چشمہ. اگر ایڑیاں رگڑتا پسر حسین تیرا. اور سر حشر میرے آقا تو یہی دھیان رکھنا کہ ہے سوز خوان و شاعر کدھر ہے حسین تیرا. مجھے کوئی غم نہیں ہے مگر حسین تیرا. میری فکر کی ہے منزل سفر حسین تیرا.
ایک اور صلوات.
اللہم صلی اللہ محمد و آل محمد.
آبِ وہ کمل کے شام میں جس دم گزر ہوا زانوں پہ جھکے شرم سے اونچا نہ سر ہوا. فرتے حیا سے جسم پسینے میں تر ہوا. ہر سو ہجوم دیکھ کے ٹکڑے جگر ہوا. ہر سو ہجوم دیکھ کے ٹکڑے جگر ہوا. اور پھر کا تمام کوچو بازار شام میں شہزادیاں پہنچ گئے دربار عام. شہزادیاں پہنچ گئے دربار عام میں. بیٹھے اسیر ظلم اندھیرے میں ننگے سر ڈر ڈر کے دیکھتی تھی سکینہ ادھر ادھر. تھے کس قدر تھکے ہوئے سجاد خوشیر گرتے ہیں
دست و پا کی نہ
مطلق رہی خبر. گرتے دست و پاکینہ مطلق رہی
خبر
جاگے تھے رات بھر جو بہت سست ہو گئے دیوار پر بخار میں سر رکھ کے سو گئے دیوار پر بخار میں سر رکھ
کے سو گئے
اور بانوں سے دم بدم تھا سکینہ کا یہ بیان کیسا مکان ہے کہ ہوا تک نہیں جہاں دیکھوں گی کس طرح سے بھلا شکل آسماں ہے زمین تک نظر آتی نہیں یہاں ہے زمین تک نظر آتی نہیں
یہاں
اماں سبوں کی جان خدا ہی بچائے گا شب کو بھی کیا چراغ جلایا شب کو بھی کیا چراغ جلایا نہ جائے گا ایسی ہی تیرگی ہے تو بس ہو چکی حیات میں جانتی ہوں آج کی شب کو شب وفات سوتے تھے لے کے سینے پہ بابا تمام رات عادت میری بگاڑ گئے شاہ خود صفات عادت میری بگاڑ گئے
شاہ خود صفات
اور شب جب شمع گل ہوئی ہے تو گھبرا کے روئی ہوں اماں بھلا کبھی میں اندھیرے میں اماں بھلا کبھی میں اندھیرے میں سوئی ہوں بیٹھی زمیں پہ لے کے سکینہ سر امام منہ رکھے منہ پہ خوب کیے انس کے کلام گش آ گیا کہلائی خزاں موت کا پیام لپٹی سرے پدر سے کھچی جب رگے لپٹی سرے پدر سے کھچی جب رگے
تمام
اور تھا منہ پہ منہ کے زیز کا نقشہ بدل گیا ہچکی بس ایک آئی وہیں دم نکل گیا ہچکی بس ایک آئی وہیں دم نکل گیا
صلوات The sponsors of tonight's program are Mr. Mukhtar Haider and Dr. Azra Haider. There is a request for a Surah Fatiha for the following Mu'min and Mu'minat: Sayyid Zulfiqar Haider, Sayyid Jawad Haider, Sayyid Shamshad Haider, Sayyid Riyazuddin Haider, Fatima Sughra, Zakia Mehdi, Sayyid Inayat Hussain, Sayyid Shujaat Hussain, Sayyid Shabir Ali Khan, Khurshid Zahra, Sayyid Amjad Shabir, Sayyid Khamar Raza, Sayyid Hassan Raza, Sayyid Abul Qasim Zaidi, and Sayyida Kanis Fatima. Bismillah. إياك نعبد وإياك صراط المستقيم أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب بسم الله بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد بسم الله ولم يكن اللهم صل على محمد وآله. Also, there is a request for dua sehat for a special Momina. She's going to go through some dialysis tomorrow, surgery tomorrow. So please recite 5 times Amma Yujib for everybody who are in need of our dua, especially those victims of flood victims in Pakistan. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Amma yujibul mustarra iza du'a wa yakshifu su'u. Amma yujibul mustarra iza du'a wa yakshifu su'u. Amma yujibul mustarra iza du'a ويكشف الصعوب عمن يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف الصعوب عمن يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف الصعوب ويجعلكم خلفاء الأرض إلها مع الله قليلا ما تذكرون. صلوات صلى الله محمد وآل محمد. As we continue our series of majalis for the Ayyam Azah, we are very fortunate to have among us tonight Sheikh Mehdi Hazare from North Carolina. He was born in North America, he was brought up in North America. So fortunately, we are fortunate enough to have this generation of speakers who can relate very closely with our youth, with our youngsters. With a loud salawat, let's welcome him to the member, inshallah. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala. And reminder that tomorrow and day after we'll have the majlis the same at Maghrib time. Please, Sheikh, Bismillah. We'll have the majlis exactly the same Maghrib time. We'll have the Salat al-Maghribain by Jamaat, inshallah, followed by the majlis. And I would request you all to please come a little closer, squeeze a little closer to the member, please. Those of you who are further away, please come a little closer. Salawat.
على حب فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. لتعجيل فرج الإمام صاحب العصر والزمان صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. الفاتحة. بسم الله. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. صلى الله عليك يا سيدي ويا مولاي يا رسول الله وعلى أهل بيتك المعصومين الأبرار الميامين المظلومين المضطهدين. السلام عليك وعلى ولدك المظلوم أبي عبد الله الحسين يا رحمة الله الواسعة ويا باب نجاة الأمة يا غريب يا مظلوم يا عطشان كربلاء. ما خاب والله من تمسك بكم أمنا من لجأ والتجأ إليكم. يا ليتنا فيا ليتنا كنا معكم سادتي فنفوز والله فوزا عظيما. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ألم ترى أن الفلك تجري في البحر بنعمة الله ليريكم من آياته إن في ذلك لآيات لكل صبار شكور. وإذا غشيهم موج كالظلل دعوا الله مخلصين له الدين فلما نجاهم إلى البر فمنهم مقتصد وما يجحد بآياتنا إلا كل ختار كفور. آمنا بالله صدق الله العلي العظيم. اللهم صل. السلام عليكم جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. I want to first of all thank Dr. Sadiq and Bayt al-Qa'im for inviting me. It's been a number of years, although Dr. Sadiq, I think maybe there is a point of clarification that you said I can relate to these young people. I don't know how many of these white hairs you see that are in my beard. I'm not sure I can quite relate, but inshallah, the thing that is beautiful that always relates is the Holy Quran and the Ahl al-Bayt alayhim as-salatu was-salam. Allahumma salli ala. It's related that in Kufa, so let me start here tonight. In Kufa, they describe once that there were some people who were sitting together, some people gathered, and as they were sitting and conversing, a strange event took place in front of them. They saw two men come together. I'm sure you've heard this. Two men came in front of each other. They met each other, and they're watching, the group who are sitting there, they're watching this event. As these two men, they meet each other. They apparently know each other. They shake hands with each other, greet each other. And they're watching and they're listening to these two men. One of the men, he says, and again the report describes, one of the men, he says, what is it about that great man who, because of his love of the family of the Prophet, he is going to be hung from the tree. He's going to be hung and killed and executed from the tree, from the palm tree. The other man, he hears this, he says, what can we say about the one who goes out to defend the grandson of Rasulullah and dies with his head cut off next, defending the life of the grandson of Rasulullah? So these men, Kufan men, are sitting there, they're watching this scene, they don't understand what's happening. They said these people don't know what they're talking about, this strange occurrence. They say another man walks by, and they say to him that we saw this strange occurrence, these two men, one of them saying that there was one who, for his love of the Ahl al-Bayt, he's going to be hung on a tree and killed and executed. And then the other one, he says about his counterpart that this one, because of his love of the grandson of Rasulullah, he will die defending him and his head will be severed on the battlefield. And we thought, what sort of conversation is this? This is all talk that has no meaning behind it. The man who was listening to this, he says, that is because you don't understand, and I'm paraphrasing the story, that this one is Maytham al-Tammar, the companion of Imam Ali alayhi salatu wassalam, who they called Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And that other is Habib ibn Madahir, yes, who comes to Al-Imam al-Hussein on the 9th of Muharram. But what also the history doesn't tell you is that that man who was explaining who those two were is also a great man. His name was Rushayd al-Hajari. Rushayd was one of the Shartatul Khamis. Shartatul Khamis, these were men who were the soldiers, the really dependable men of Imam Ali in Kufa. That if ever anything happened, they are the first line Imam Ali will need, they will step forward. Rushayd al-Hajari was one of them. And in the time of the event of Karbala, they describe that Rushayd al-Hajari was eventually brought in front of Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad. And Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad, he's threatening him. And he says, so what should be done with you? Rushayd al-Hajari, he says, I was told by my master Ali ibn Abi Talib that one day I will be caught because of my loyalty to him and to the family of Rasulullah. They will sever my arms, they will sever my legs, and they will cut off my tongue. So they say Ubaydullah, some riwayat, some of the traditions say somebody else. He says, we will do exactly that to you, except we will not cut off your tongue so that we can make a liar out of Ali ibn Abi Talib. We will cut off your arms, cut off your legs, and we will make a liar out of Ali ibn Abi Talib because he said also your tongue would be cut off. So they take him, Rushayd al-Hajari. His daughter relates this story, that they took my father, they did exactly what they were going to do, They punished him in this severe manner, and they left him. She said, no sooner had they done this, that he immediately started to call the people. He said, write down from me everything I know from Ali ibn Abi Talib. Take down this information from you. All of you should be following Ali ibn Abi Talib. His tongue would not stop in the defense of Ali ibn Abi Talib and the defense of Ahl al-Bayt alayhim as-salatu was-salam, so much so that Ubaydullah ibn Ziyad eventually was forced to cut off his tongue. He was forced to do so. Now, why do I start with this story? And Rushayd al-Hajari was martyred in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And as hard as these events are to listen to, we take this as a perspective of Karbala and what it means to live in the life of this world, having to struggle and to fight. Rushayd al-Hajari, it is reported that he had what is called ilm al-balaya, that Imam Ali alayhi salam had taught him how the trials will afflict people, how pain will afflict people, that he had knowledge from Imam Ali alayhi salatu wassalam about this. And this is an interesting thing to know. I ask this question of you, that when we raise our children, are we raising them merely to navigate through life and acquire what they need to acquire so they're happy? Like if I raise my child, I'm going to raise them that go work hard in school, be honest, be compassionate, do your salat, all those things. These are the standard, yes? But do I raise my child to be able to put up with tragedy? Do I raise my child to teach them that trial is coming? Do I even remind my own self? Do I even teach my own self that God forbid one day tragedy will come and that mentally I should prepare, in my heart I should prepare? Or should I just walk in a cloud or in a haze thinking that all of life is going to be easy? And clearly we see what is happening in Pakistan with the floods. We see tragedies all over the world that are happening. I would be remiss if I did not mention East Africa today. East Africa is experiencing a drought. If there's flooding in Pakistan, East Africa is experiencing a drought the likes of which decades they have not seen. Decades. And people, just go look, how much in your news do you hear about it? Nothing, nothing. And we're not talking 1-2 days of droughts. We're talking weeks, if not months of drought in a place that is already arid and dry. They're dying. People are dying. And not only are they dying, it's going in generations. The effect of that drought is not just on those people there, but if they have children and those children have children, that effect of the drought goes through in generations. Believe me, it's epigenetic. It carries from generation to generation. So these trials that are occurring, it is there. And we don't prepare ourselves for it, nor do we understand its effect on us. We talk about Karbala, we describe the masa'ib of Al-Imam al-Hussein, the masa'ib of al-Masa'ib, Zainab al-Kubra alayha salatu was-salam. Yes? But have we considered what that is for us? Particularly because we are not living in the flood of Pakistan or in the drought of East Africa or any other trial. We live comfortable lives. And yet, until it hits us, we don't consider it. But maybe we should consider it. And the Quran talks about that very clearly. Because that musibah has an important role to play in your life. Believe me, the ayah I related to you of the Holy Quran, it's a very beautiful ayah. It says, أَلَمْ تَرَى أَنَّ الْفُلْكَ تَجْرِي فِي الْبَحْرِ بِنِعْمَةِ اللَّهِ. Do you not see that the ships that are traveling on the water, they are doing so on the water and not sinking? Why? Because of the ni'mah of God. Look at how beautiful Allah has described. That boat that is going on the surface of the water does not sink. It carries you. You are carried. It does not sink because of the ni'mah of Allah. لِيُرِيَكُم مِّنْ آيَاتِهِ. Why? Because He wants to show you His signs. Now, this is a good sign, right? That if someone says to you that I can travel across the ocean on a boat, that's a good sign. If I say Allah has made it such that airplanes can fly in the sky, that's a good sign. It's positive. It means that I can go from place to place safely. I can transport myself. I can go get a job. I can earn. I can do different things. But is it always that way? No, it's not always that way. And that's why Allah, He says, إِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ لَآيَاتٍ لِكُلِّ صَبَّارٍ شَكُورٍ. He says, this sign of the boat going on the surface of the water it is a sign for two people, or people with two qualities. Those who are sabbar and those who are shakur, thankful, grateful. So now that's the translation of it. When you say sabbar and shakur, what do you mean? Sabr is easy. You translate that to mean patience. And this is where I will say that the Quran is where we have to focus. The Quran explains in its delicate language, in its eloquent language, what it's trying to tell us. It says two groups, or two qualities that are in you. This is a sign. And these people are the ones who will notice the sign. Those who have sabr, those who are sabbar, and those who are shakur, who are grateful. Now I ask you, what does sabr have to do with this? Me noticing that the boat is floating on the water and that this is the gift of Allah, what does sabr have to do with this? Why use the word sabbar? And only Allah knows. Only Allah knows why He uses the word sabbar. Because then He gives you the opposite circumstance. Because just as you have the ni'mah of Allah that creates ease in your life, what also is sitting there next to you? The opportunity or the chance that you will have what? Bala, difficulty, trial. So the ayah, it says that yes, we showed you the sign, the boat sits on top of the water, the fulk is on top, the ark is on top of the water, and that it is there because Allah wants you to see the sign, and it is a sign for those who have sabbar and who are shakur, who have the act of patience in them and gratitude in them. Then the next ayah, what does it say? It says, وَإِذَا غَشِيَهُمْ مَوْجٌ كَالظُّلَلِ دَعَوُا اللَّهَ مُخْلِصِينَ لَهُ الدِّينَ. When the wave comes crashing over their head, suddenly the wave comes crashing over the head, and it says كَالظُّلَلِ. ظُلَل, the riwayat, the tafasir, they say it means like the dark clouds on top, such that they are surrounded by this darkness. The waves come crashing over their heads, and the clouds are dark around this. What did they do? دَعَوَا اللَّهَ مُخْلِصِينَ لَهُ الدِّينَ. They called Allah and they supplicated to Allah. They called in their loudest voice. And what did they do? They said, we are mukhlis to your religion. Now look again at the beauty of the ayah of the Holy Quran. It doesn't say da'u Allah mukhlisin and stops. It doesn't say that they were just mukhlis. It's they're mukhlis for the deen. Why? Because they are on a path and they have to stay on that path. It's not just that I am mukhlis. It's that I am mukhlis on a path. That means something in the ayah. So then the ayah says what? It says, فَلَمَّا نَجَّاهُمْ إِلَى الْبَرِّ فَمِنْهُمْ مُقْتَصِدٌ. He says, when Allah saved them from the crashing waves and the clouds, the dark clouds on top of them, and He brought them to the land, فَمِنْهُمْ مُقْتَصِدٌ. He says, some of them teeter in the middle. They're not convinced of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They're not unconvinced, but they're not completely convinced either. They're in the middle. They're muqtasid. See? Now tell me, who is that speaking of? The one who is the kafir who is already gone? No, he is not convinced at all. He denies completely. Is it talking about the one who has complete iman? No, that's not the person who's in the middle. It's those, God forbid, like us. Some of our iman is here. When on good days, iman is here. But on bad days, where does our iman go? It goes down very quickly, doesn't it? We start to despair. So the ayah says, فَمِنْهُمْ مُقْتَصِدٌ. And then he says, وَمَا يَجْحَدُ بِآيَاتِنَا إِلَّا كُلُّ خَتَّارٍ كَفُورٍ. Now look, the beauty of the ayah. The only ones who deny, juhd, when the ayah, it describes juhd, it's describing denial or argument against. So Allah, He says, the only ones who argue against our signs, deny our signs, are two. Just like in the first ayah there were two, yes, Sabbar and Shakur. Here it is Khattar and Kafur. And look at the beauty. In one it describes the good qualities, in the next ayah it describes the bad qualities. So now what is Khattar and Kafur? If Sabbar, Shakur is those who are patient and grateful, what is Khattar and what is Kafur? Kafur we know. To do kufr is denial of Allah. Denial being ungrateful, denying the gift. It is the opposite of shukr. So what is khatr? The ayah, when you say khattar, it means somebody who has pledged to do something, they don't do it. They don't do it. They waver. If I come to you and you say, I need you to do such and such, and I say, okay, I'm going to do it. I pledge that I'm going to do it. But when it comes time to doing it, the task is very difficult and I waver. I fall off the path very quickly. Yes? Tell me today, our religion is a religion based on our nature, but it requires certain strength. Start with Salat al-Fajr. Getting up for Salat al-Fajr is hard, is not easy. It requires you to wake up. When you pledge and you say, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa anna Muhammadan Rasulullah, you are pledging what? To get up for Salat al-Fajr. Are you not? And if you don't, what have you done? You've essentially broken the covenant with Allah. You've said, I was telling you that Allah, I'm going to get up, but I didn't get up. When Allah said, give your khums, and you didn't give your khums, what happened? You did the same thing. Anything that you vowed, why? Because you are mukhlasina lahud deen. Deen, the path. You're not just mukhlas. You're mukhlis, you have ikhlas on the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so now in this ayah, the second ayah, juxtaposed against the sabbar and shakur is the khattar and the kafur. And what the mufassirin, they explain, is when you say khattar, you say somebody who has claimed and given the covenant that I am on this path and I'm going to follow this path and do what is required of this path. But when things get difficult and the waves start crashing over my head, what's going to happen? I'm going to fall. And when I fall, what happens? Two things happen. You don't have sabr, yes? Why can't you stay on the path? Because you don't have patience to stay on the path. Patience is not just your fact that you're not complaining. Patience means to remain on the course, on what you are supposed to do. And so if you are khattar, you have done what? You've lost your patience. And if you've lost your patience, what else have you done? You forgot about the ni'mah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you did what? Kufr along with it. See how the Quran compares these two qualities. So I ask you, where do we stand? Are we sabbar shakur, or are we khattar and kafur wal-'ayadu billah? We fall in the middle. Because at times our shukr and our patience in the way of Allah is very strong, and at times it is not. At times we falter. And believe me, if we focus on the words of the Holy Quran, you will understand how Allah, He knows us and He paints a picture for us right in front of our faces. So that we can see. The Quran will describe it to you. We need only hold on to the Holy Quran and understand the words in which the ayahs are explaining the circumstances. And believe me, we are this way because we are so weak. And we tend to blow things out of proportion. I will keep it simple. I know it is a work day. I worked remotely today as well, alhamdulillah. I'm sure you are all tired. So I will keep it straightforward a little bit. Allahumma salli ala. We have a tendency in our lives to do something called catastrophizing. And we do this because insan likes control. And truly, there are things in life that are truly catastrophic. The floods in Pakistan, it is a great tragedy, great trial. The droughts, other issues that are happening, people suffering from bad diseases, cancer, God forbid, all sorts of things that can happen. Catastrophes and trials, all of these things exist. And they are very difficult to deal with. And may Allah preserve and save all of us from any such trial, insha'Allah, and all of our children from such trial. But it is insan's nature, on certain occasions, when a trial comes that is upon us, we make it bigger than it is. We consider, because it's happening to me, it is such a massive problem. Meanwhile, somebody next to me may have double the amount of pain in their life. Yes? And someone else may be going through 10 times as much suffering as I am going through. But I catastrophize it and I make it so big, I make this trial so immense that it becomes unbearable. And it becomes a reason, wal-'ayadu billah, a justification for me doing what I'm not supposed to do. That is a problem. And what's the cause of this, my dear brothers and sisters? It is uncertainty. It is because we don't like uncertainty. In our lives, if some trial comes and falls on us, what is the first thing you think? When is it going to stop? Right? When is certainty going to come into my life such that this is removed? We don't like uncertainty. We don't like that our course is unknown to us. They did a study, an interesting study, and this is reported in the journal Nature Communications, in which they took a group of people, they sat them at a table, and they put a video game. You'll ask, Mahdi is sitting up here and talking about video games. I'll come to my point. They took these people, they sat them on a table, they put a computer screen and a video game to them. And they said, look, you need to go into this video game. There are rocks in the video game, and you need to click on the rock. Some of the rocks have snakes under them. You need to pick the rocks that don't have snakes under them. And there's a pattern. Certain rocks look a certain way, and you know there's a snake under it. Certain rocks, you can see there's no snake under it. So there's various ways of doing it. And what they also did was they attached a little thing to their hand that if they pricked a rock with a snake under it, they got zapped with a little electric shock. Nothing harmful, but you get zapped. And you feel it. You pull your hand a little bit. So these people went in and they started picking. No rock is picked, no snake, they're fine. Another rock they pick, no snake, fine. They pick a third rock, there's a snake, they get zapped. Meanwhile, there's a camera watching them, looking at how much they're perspiring, looking at the dilation of their eyes, all looking for stress, right? Nobody wants to get zapped, no one wants to get electrified. So they're looking at these responses that are occurring inside of these people. What they noticed, the result of this study was, that people were happiest in two circumstances. Not happiest, but least stressed. When they knew that there was no snake under the rock and they weren't going to get electrified. Or that they knew for sure that there was a snake under the rock and that they were going to get electrified. Make sense? Two opposite extremes. That they are not going to get electrified, or for sure they're going to get electrified. People were less stressed. You know when they were most stressed? When they were in the middle, when they didn't know. People didn't know, when they didn't know what was going to happen, that created more stress, all right? Greater stress, more perspiration. And those people who were acting because of that stress, because of that uncertainty, had a higher risk score, meaning they were more aware of the risk around them, all right? So what does that tell you? It means that we would rather take a known trial, a known difficulty that we know is coming, versus one that we don't know is coming. Yes, versus this uncertainty that lies in front of us. See how Allah teaches us. This is science. It's just telling you your nature. There's nothing else. There's nothing in it. It's just teaching you. And if you think about it, if you know something's going to happen to you, what are you going to do? You'll prepare for it. But if you don't know it's coming, then what happens? Then you prepare. Yes? So for most people, uncertainty means you're living chaos. You don't know what the next step is. But for a believer, what does that mean? It means you prepare in your heart. It means you say that, Ya Allah, whatever the path is, I will stay on that path. That whatever that trial is, I will not allow it to activate my emotions. My dear brothers and sisters, it is your emotion that scares you into doing something you don't want to do. Trial is there. Pain and suffering is there. It's your emotion that activates you. And you know the ayah of the Holy Quran, وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَنْ يَعْبُدُ اللَّهَ عَلَى حَرْفٍ فَإِنْ أَصَابَهُ خَيْرٌ اطْمَأَنَّ بِهِ وَإِنْ أَصَابَتْهُ فِتْنَةٌ انْقَلَبَ عَلَى وَجْهِهِ خَسِرَ الدُّنْيَا وَالْآخِرَةِ. They say there are some people who worship Allah on the harf, meaning on the edge. If good happens to them, what happens? They have itmi'nan, they're satisfied, they're content. If a fitna comes on them, what happens to them? انقلب على وجهه خسر الدنيا والآخرة. They fall on their face, they collapse completely. Fitna, what is fitna? Fitna is just trial, difficulty. But what does fitna do to you? When, God forbid, your child gets sick, God forbid, I don't know, you are driving a Lamborghini, okay? You got a nice Lamborghini, and you go and dent it into a pole somewhere, God forbid. Yes? Why do you feel that pain suddenly? Your heart drops. Does it mean that something has actually happened? No, it's just a physical thing that has happened. Your child got sick, that's not good, of course, but it's a physical event. Why does your heart drop suddenly? Because of emotion. Because fitna is the activation of emotion. It activates your emotion. It creates that catastrophe inside of yourself. And that is the human way. And yet, look at the ayah. It says, be sabbar and be shakur. Be patient and be thankful to Allah. Not just thankful and patient for the sake of thankfulness and patience, but because you've made a covenant to Allah to stand on Allah's path. Yes? That is the key. And believe me, in every way, shape, and form, this is the beauty of our religion. They say a man, one day he came to Al-Imam Abi Abdullah Al-Husayn alayhi salatu wassalam. And he says, Yabna Rasulillah, I have heard from your grandfather, Rasulullah, or from people as well, that if you're going to ask for your needs, that you should ask from a noble-faced Arab man or a woman who have a noble face, someone who is benevolent, someone who is known to be with the Quran, people of the Quran, or somebody who is a who has a great character in them. So the poor man, he says to Imam Hussein, he says, there is no more noble Arab than your grandfather, Rasulullah. And there is no one who is Sahib al-Kitab, master of the book, other than your grandfather, Rasulullah. And we know that there is no one more benevolent than your grandfather, Rasulullah. And Rasulullah, he says, when you want to come and find me in my character and my highness, come to Al-Hasan and Al-Husayn. So I am here at your doorstep asking you, Yabna Rasulullah, that can you help me? Imam Hussein, he says, you have spoken correctly, but he says, for everything, there is a price you have to pay. So the man, he asks, he says, Yabna Rasulullah, tell me, what is the price? He says, answer some questions for me, and if you answer those questions, I will give you a portion. If you answer 3 questions, I'll ask you 3 questions. If you answer all 3, I will give you 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, and I will give you all of what you are asking for. The poor man, he says, fine, ask. Al-Imam Al-Husayn alayhi salam, he says to him, he asks him the question, what is the best action of an insan, of a human being? The poor man, he says, Al-Imanu Billah, belief in God. It's the best action. There's no action better than Iman. He asks him, Imam Hussein says, the second question I want to ask you is, what is the greatest salvation for insan? What will save insan? The man, the poor man, he says, At-tawakkul ala Allah. Have dependence on God. That is the greatest salvation. Think. He doesn't say have a bank account. He doesn't say this, that. He says depend on God. That is the greatest thing that will save you. Al-Imam Al-Husayn alayhi salatu wassalam, he says, finally the third question, he says, what makes insan beautiful? What makes human beings beautiful? What gives beauty to insan? The poor man, he says, Yabna Rasulillah, al-ilm ma'al-hilm. Knowledge with forbearance. That gives an insan beauty. Knowledge with forbearance. Why? Because people of knowledge, what? They often have to put up with people with ignorance. And to deal with somebody who is ignorant is not easy. That's why Rasulullah was what? Halim. He was patient. He was forbearant. So now Imam Hussein doesn't stop. He says, what if there's no knowledge and forbearance? Then what? The poor man, he says, then let them be wealthy and generous at the same time. Then even if they don't have knowledge, maybe they have wealth. And if they have wealth, then they should be generous with that wealth. Imam Hussein, he says, what if they don't have wealth? What if they don't have wealth? The poor man, he says, then let them be poor and patient at the same time. Let them be poor and be patient at the same time. We all fit into one of these 3 categories, do we not? He said, let them be poor and patient. Imam Hussein then asks the man, he says, what if he can't even do that? The poor man, he says, then let the thunderbolt come out of the sky and strike this man dead. That's it. Imam Hussein, he gives him the 3rd piece that he had. But think about it. We are all caught in this category, no? We are caught in this category. And if we don't teach our children this very thing, that look, you have wealth, share it. You have knowledge, be patient, be forbearant, share that knowledge, but be patient and forbearant. And if, God forbid, you suffer a trial, realize that there is a purpose for that trial. My dear brothers and sisters, growth of insan does not occur when life is comfortable. Does it? When you have everything, do you grow as a human being? You do not grow. You don't become spiritually deeper. You don't seek Allah. You become complacent, wal-'ayadu billah. I'm not saying that always that's what happens, but it is the tendency. But yet when you suffer difficulty and trial, what happens? You try to find Allah. The key is that when you go to find Allah, when He brings you onto the land, like the ayah says, you don't become khattar and kafur. Yes? You don't become a denier and break the covenant that you have in front of Allah. Because calamity is in many, many things. The calamity that afflicts us, it is in many things, believe me. The calamity that we think in the loss of the life of this world, yes, it's profound, it can pain you, sometimes it is serious, but there are bigger forms of calamity. They say one day somebody asked Al-Imam As-Sadiq alayhi salatu was salam, Allahumma salli ala, in which even it is reported, and I am again paraphrasing the hadith, in which Al-Imam As-Sadiq alayhi salatu was salam, he says, do you know the calamity of speech? The calamity of speech is lying. That any speech that has a lie in it or a falsehood in it, what happens? It is struck by calamity. Any speech with a lie in it or a falsehood in it or some twisting of the truth, it is calamitous for that speech. Al-Imam As-Sadiq, he says, you know what the calamity of knowledge is? Forgetting that knowledge. If you have knowledge and you forget it, that is a great calamity. It's a great calamity to forget the knowledge. Imam, he says, you know what the calamity of worship is? If you worship Allah. The calamity is if you come lazily, in a lazy way, hesitant to your worship. That is a calamity that maybe you didn't consider. Imam, he says, intelligence. Do you know what the calamity of intelligence is? Arrogance. You're intelligent people are often arrogant. That is a calamity. That is a bala. It is a trial. Imam, he says, bravery is a great quality. But do you know what the calamity of bravery is? Injustice. You become so brave that you trample over people. You don't even consider you're trampling over people and doing injustice to them. Imam, he says, magnanimity is a great quality. Being generous to give to people, helping the poor. But he says, do you know what's a calamity of magnanimity? He says, going and doing for them and then holding it on top of their head that I did it for you, I did it for you, I did it for you. Quran talks about that. Imam, he says, beauty itself is something Allah gives. Yusuf alayhi salam was beautiful. He says, you know what the calamity of beauty is? Vanity, to be vain. You become vain. And he says, nobility is a great quality to have. To be noble, to have nobility is a great quality. That's why, what does Al-Imam Al-Hussein alayhi salatu was salam, he says, hayhat minna dhilla. Take the lowliness away from us. We are too noble to drop our head. Imam Hussein was never degraded, never degraded, never lowered, never ashamed, never embarrassed. It was the people who thought that they could crush him, yet his soul and his position were too high. And that's why even nobility is a great quality, but Imam warns. He says, if you let pride come into it, it'll be a great calamity. Do not allow pride to come into your nobility. These are the true imtihan, the true tests that are there. We are focused on tests in the life of this world, and yet our knowledge, our bravery, our intelligence, our magnanimity, our generosity, our beauty, our nobility, all of it is suffering calamity. Calamity after calamity after calamity. We are losing ourselves. And we are claiming at the same time, mukhlasina lahuddin, mukhlasina lahuddin, mukhlasina lahuddin. We are on your path, we are on your path, we are on your path. Ya Allah, constantly seeking from you. These are the things that in the life of this world must be recognized. And in these days, at the end of the month of Muharram, we remember particularly the legacy of Imam Ali Zainul Abidin alayhi salatu wassalam. In one of his dua, in which he asks Allah for good, one of the dua in Sahif al-Sajjadiyya, he asks Allah to make his affairs good. That when things are difficult, he's asking that Allah turn it and make it good. In one part of this dua, he says, وَاشْغَلْ قُلُوبَنَا بِذِكْرِكَ عَنْ كُلِّ ذِكْرٍ. He says, Oh Allah, I am asking you for goodness, but I am doing so by telling you that occupy my mind, my attention, my soul with your dhikr and away from all other dhikr. Let me remember you, Ya Allah, and nothing else. وَأَلْسِنَتَنَا بِشُكْرِكَ عَنْ كُلِّ شُكْرٍ. Occupy my tongue so that all I do is thank you, Ya Allah. I show gratitude to you and not gratitude to anything else. You understand my meaning. Gratitude to you is everything, Ya Allah. وَجَوَارِحَنَا بِطَاعَتِكَ عَنْ كُلِّ طَاعَةٍ. Oh Allah, make it such that you occupy all the parts of my body with your obedience and not the obedience of anything else. فَإِن قَدَّرْتَ لَنَا الْفَرَاغَ فَاجْعَلْهُ فَرَاغَ سَلَامَةٍ. He says, if you choose that at some point in my life that I should have a moment of reprieve where I am not busy doing something or preoccupied with something, ensure that I do not fall prey and that I remain safe in that time. Let not my idle time become a source of damage to me. Why does that happen, my dear brothers and sisters? Because your mind starts to drift into places you don't want it to go. Especially when bala comes. When difficulty and challenge and trial comes, where does your mind go? It goes to where it should not go. That's why Imam al-Sajjad, he says, occupy my mind with your dhikr. Occupy my tongue with your shukr, and occupy all of my body parts with your obedience, Ya Allah. That's why in 35 years, you know this, 35 years he spent mourning Karbala, asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to show him the path, the clear path to get to him. And this is our Imam, he is the door to Allah. But he is teaching us. That's why we have Sahif al-Sajjadiyya to apply to ourselves, yes? And that's why in his dua, you feel the pain in the words of his dua, yes? Read the dua of Imam al-Sajjad and try to imagine what he was feeling when he said those words. And you will feel the sentiment, the pain, the suffering of someone who lost what he did. And obviously we cannot know what he felt, but at least it makes you reflect on your own pain and your own suffering. That's why he spoke in the way that he did. When even the attendant came to him, and Imam would weep and cry when sitting to eat, and the attendant will come and give him the food, he will give him the water, what would he say? The attendant would say to him, Ya ibn Rasulillah, how long will this continue? 35 years have gone. Years, decades have gone. You are still weeping and crying for your father. You are still weeping and crying. He would say, كيف أأكل وصبت رسول الله مات جوعانا وكيف أشرب وصبت الرسول مات عطشانا. How do I eat and the grandson of the Prophet died hungry? How do I quench my thirst with water when the grandson of Rasulullah died thirsty? Yes? That same question was asked by one more person. Do you know this? That after the martyrdom of Imam al-Hussein, when they were bringing the sabaya, the prisoners, through the battlefield, Imam al-Sajjad had been tied as well and was being taken. At one moment when they stopped in the middle of the battlefield, that you imagine the cruelty of an enemy towards their captives. That even in the modern warfare or any warfare, that this is not acceptable. That there is some code of honor that is held for your captives, for those you have quote unquote defeated in battle. But not these people. They bring them, and at one moment Imam al-Sajjad is looking, and he has the Rawi, he says he has a look of pain on his face. So someone says to him, Mali araka tajza' wa tahla ya baqiyata jaddi wa walidi wa ikhwati. He says, how is it, or the person who speaks to Imam Sajjad, she says to him, she says, how is it that I see you like this, anxious You are the testament of my grandfather, my father, and my brothers. He turns to her and he says, Ya ammata, wa kayfa la ajza' wa ahla, wa ara sayyidi wa mawlaya bi abdillah, wa ikhwati wa umumti, wa ashab abi mudarrajina bidima'ihim murammalin. How is it that I cannot be bewildered and anxious, standing here, O my aunt Ya Zainab, when I see my father, my brothers, my uncles, my cousins, the companions of my father, drenched in their own blood, lying there on the ground. Lying there. This same Imam of ours, he was paraded through Kufa and brought into Sham. And you know that when the man asked him that, Yabna Rasulillah, the bala came on you, the difficulties and the trials fell upon you, you saw the killing of your father, you saw the martyrdom of your brothers, everything in front of you. Which was the most difficult for you? And the answer was Asham, Asham, Asham. Always Asham. In the dua of Al-Imam As-Sajjad, picture Sham as you read the dua of Al-Imam Zain al-Abidin. And you will feel the sentiment of that dua. You will feel the faqr towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He was brought in, and you know this, that the old man came to him, one old man. And he said, thank God, praise be to God, who has rid the earth of your father and your people, and brought relief to Amir al-Fasiqeen, Yazid. They say Imam al-Sajjad, when he hears this, he says, Ya Shaykh, hal qara'ta al-Qur'an? Have you read the Qur'an, O Shaykh? The Shaykh, he says, yes, I have read the Qur'an. Imam al-Sajjad, he says, hal qara'ta al-aya fa'ati dhal qurba haqqa? Give the close relatives their right. The Shaykh, he says, na'am qara'ta. I have read it. Imam al-Sajjad, he says, nahnu al-qurba, ya Shaykh. Imam al-Sajjad, he says, ya Shaykh, هل قرأت الآية واعلموا أن ما غنمتم من شيء فأن لله خمسه وللرسول ولذي القربى? Have you read the ayah of the Quran that says anything that you have acquired, that you have gained in surplus, then Allah gets a fifth of it, and to Rasul and to the qurba, to the relatives? The Shaykh, he says, yes, I have read that ayah. Imam al-Sajjad, he says, نحن القربى ya Shaykh. We are the qurba. We are that family. Finally, Imam al-Sajjad, he says, Ya Shaykh, hal qara'ta al-aya innama yuridu Allahu liyudhhiba ankum al-rijsa ahla al-bayt wa yutahhirakum tathira. Have you read the ayah of the Quran from Surah Al-Ahzab, where Allah says that we want to purify you, O Ahl al-Bayt, thorough purification, remove from you all impurity? The old man, he says, Naam. قرأتها, I have read that ayah. Imam al-Sajjad, Imam al-Sajjad, he says, Ya Shaykh, nahnu ahlu bayt al-nubuwah. He says, oh Shaykh, we are the family of that prophet being referred to in the ayah of the Quran. The Shaykh, he says, هل أنتم هم? هل أنتم هم? Are you really them? Imam al-Sajjad, he says, نعم يا شيخ نحن هم بحق جدنا رسول الله. Yes, certainly we are that Ahl al-Bayt by the right of our grandfather Rasulullah. And Imam al-Sajjad, the Sabaya, the captives, are brought in front of Yazid, in the court of Yazid. You are all aware of the words of Al-Imam al-Sajjad in that court of Yazid, la'natullahi alayh. Al-Imam al-Sajjad, even when Yazid was denying him the opportunity to speak, finally, the crowd, they said, what harm can this young man do? Let him speak. They say, Imam al-Sajjad, He praised Allah and his grandfather Rasulullah. And then he said, Ayyuhan nas. This warning of Imam is for us. It is for even his followers. He says, Ayyuhan nas, أحذركم من الدنيا وما فيها فإنها دار زوال وانتقال. O people, I warn you against the life of this world and whatever is in it, because it is only a place from which you will be taken. You will not stay here permanently, leaving everything behind you. قد أفنت القرون الخالية والأمم الماضية أفتطمعون بعدهم بالبقاء هيهات هيهات لا بد لكم اللحوق بهم. He says all of the old generations have died. All of the old communities and nations have been eradicated. Are you so greedy that you want to remain in this place, in this world? Hayhat. Know that you are going to follow in their footsteps. Nothing will be left behind. Then Al-Imam As-Sajjad, he one by one began to inform the community of people who were there, those who had gathered in the court of Yazid, who he is and what is his station. He described finally saying, وَأَنَّ مِنَّا النَّبِيَّ الْمُخْتَارِ مُحَمَّدٍ. From our family is the chosen, the Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. وَمِنَّا الصِّدِّيقِ وَمِنَّا سَيِّدَةِ النِّسَاءِ. From us is the Siddiq, and by Siddiq he meant Ali ibn Abi Talib. From us is the master of all the ladies, Fatima az-Zahra. وَمِنَّا الطَّيَّارِ. From our family is Ja'far al-Tayyar, whose arms were severed, so Allah gave him wings in Jannah. وَمِنَّا أَسَدُ اللَّهِ وَأَسَدُ رَسُولِهِ. From us is the lion of God and the lion of Rasulullah, Hamza ibn Abd al-Muttalib. Finally, Al-Imam As-Sajjad, he says, أَيُّهَا النَّاسِ من عرفني فقد عرفني ومن لم يعرفني أنبأته بحسبي ونسبي. Whoever knows me, they already know who I am. Whoever does not know me, I will tell you where I come from and where is my connection to. أنا ابن مكة ومنى، أنا ابن زمزم وصفا، أنا ابن من حمل على البراق في الهوى، أنا من أخذ بجبرائيل إلى سدرة المنتهى، أنا الذي كان قاب قوسين أو أدنى. I am the son of Mecca and Mina. I am the son of Zamzam and Safa. I am the son of the one who was carried on Buraq into the skies. I am the son of the one who Jibrail took to Sidrat al-Muntaha. I am the son of the one who was brought within the Arsh of Allah, the length of 2 bows or less than 2 bows. And Ibn Muhammad al-Mustafa. I am the son of Muhammad al-Mustafa. أنا ابن علي المرتضى. أنا ابن فاطمة الزهراء. He said, I am the son of Fatima al-Zahra. أنا ابن خديجة الكبرى. I am the son of Khadijah al-Kubra. Then Al-Imam As-Sajjad, he says, letting everyone know, أنا ابن المقتول ظلما. I am the son of the one who was killed oppressed. أنا ابن محزوز الرأس من القفا. I am the son of the one whose head was severed from the body. أنا ابن العطشان حتى قضى. I am the son of the thirsty one who remained thirsty until he was killed. أنا ابن طريق ضريح كربلاء. I am the son of the one whose body was left on the ground of Karbala. أنا ابن مسلوب العمامة والرداء. I am the son of the one whose amama was stolen, whose clothes were robbed from the أنا ابن من حرمه من العراق إلى الشام تسبى. I am the son of the one whose ladies were taken prisoner, carried from Iraq to Sham. My dear brothers and sisters, this same as Sajjad on his deathbed, lying there, poisoned by the Umayyads. They say Al-Imam al-Baqir was on his body. He was lying there holding his father in the last moments, about to see that his father is leaving this world. They say Al-Imam al-Sajjad began to weep and cry. Al-Imam al-Baqir, he said, Ya Aba, why are you crying and weeping? You are about to depart this world. Go to see your grandfather Rasulullah, to see your family, to see your father Al-Hussein. I am here with you. Al-Imam al-Sajjad, he says, Ya Bunayya Aba Ja'far, O my son, O Muhammad, I am lying here on my deathbed. You are close to me, holding me in your lap, by my side in this last moment. But on the day of Ashura, who was on the body of my father Al-Hussein, كان الشمر جالسا على صدره قابضا على شيبته. Shimr was sitting on my father's chest, grabbing the beard of my وسيعلم الذين ظلموا على محمد أي منقلب ينقلبون والعاقبة للمتقين. إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. باسمك العظيم الأعظم الأعز الأجل الأكرم يا الله. اللهم إنا نسألك بحق محمد وأنت المحمود، وبحق علي وأنت العلي الأعلى، وبحق فاطمة وأنت فاطر السماوات والأرض، وبحق الحسن وأنت المحسن، وبحق الحسين الشهيد وأنت قديم الإحسان. اللهم إنا نسألك بغربة الحسين وبعطش الحسين وبدم الحسين، فرج عنا يا الله فرجا عاجلا قريبا كلمح البصر أو هو أقرب من ذلك، وافرغ علينا صبرا وتوفنا مسلمين. والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين.
Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein.
اسكن يشرب.
अब्बास आ जाओ भाई अकेला है, अब्बास आ जाओ भाई अकेला है, अब्बास आ जाओ भाई अकेला है, तन्हा मुसाफिर को लाखों ने गेला है, अब्बास आ जाओ भाई अकेला है, अब्बास आ जाओ भाई अकेला है। तुमने नहीं देखी खुलबत हमारी, ज़ैनब दिलाई मेरी सवार सीने से जा کیسی یہ شام آئی اولاد سیدہ پر کیسی یہ شام آئی اولاد سیدہ پر کیسی یہ شام آئی اولاد سیدہ پر سجاد رو رہے ہیں زینب سے منہ چھپا کر کیسی یہ شام آئی اولاد سیدہ پر کیسی یہ شام آئی اولاد سیدہ پر ایک سبق بے کفن ہے بھائی کا اس کے لاشا عباس کی بہن کا باقی رہا نہ پردہ اب سوچ کی ہے زینب مانگے کفن یا چادر کیسی یہ شام اولاد سیدہ پر کیسی یہ شام آئی اولاد سیدہ پر بازو کہیں پڑے ہیں لاشا کہیں پڑا ہے زینب کی بے بسی پر غازی کا رب رہا ہے رو کی ہے بے بسی بھی فرش عذاب بچھا کر کیسی یہ شام آئی یدا پر کیسی یہ شام آئی اولاد سیدہ پر جو گھر میں گو کا غم بھی پیدل نہیں چلی ہے ایک گنگ میں وہی زینب عباس بن گئی ہے پیر پہ آ گئی ہے کن عالم اٹھا کر کیسی یہ شام آئی اولاد سیدہ پر کیسی یہ شام آئی ساجاگ سے لپک کر کہتی رہی سکینہ احساس ہو رہا ہے میں ہو گئی حکیمہ ظالم ڈرا رہا ہے ریزہ گے کھا کر ایسی یہ شام اولاد سیدہ پر کیسی یہ شام آئی لاشوں کے گرمیاں وہ بابا کو گونگتی ہے منہ اپنا پیک کر یہ فریاد کر رہی ہے قدموں میں ہی سلا لو بابا مجھے بلا کر کیسی یہ شام آئی پر کیسی یہ شام آئی اولاد سیدہ پر جب آ گئے نجف سے بیٹی کو ملنے بابا زانوں پہ رکھے سریے کہنے لگی وہ دکھیاں زینب اجڑ گئی ہے کرب و بلا بسا کر کیسی اولاد سیدہ پر کیسی یہ شام آئی خیموں کے ساتھ جھولا بیچ کر بھی جل گیا ہے ناموں سے مصطفیٰ کو باغی کہا گیا ہے لے جائیں گے صبح کو قیدی ہمیں بنا کر کیسی یہ شام آئی گزرے گی کیسی آور مکتل سے شہزادی آب گنگے راک مومن یہ سوچ کر گزاری زینب کا نام لے گا ظالم کو مسکرا کر ایسی شام آئی اولاد سیدہ پر کیسی یہ شام آئی اولاد ساجد رو رہے ہیں زینب سے منہ چھپا کر کیسی
الأجل وارث کربلا الأجل الأجل وارث کربلا الأجل ہے آپ کی نگاہوں میں عاشور کا سما یا صاحب زمان ہے آپ کی نگاہوں میں عاشور کا سما یا صاحب زمان ایک روز میں اجڑ گیا زہرا کا گلستان یا صاحب زمان ہے آپ کی نگاہوں میں عاشور کا سما یا صاحب زمان یا صاحب زمان کیا وقت امتحان تھا ایک بوڑھے باپ پر برچھی پہ سر کے سینے سے کھینچی گئی مگر دل میں حسین کے غم دل میں حسین کے غم اکبر کی ہے سنا یا صاحب زمان ہے آپ کی نگاہوں میں عاشور کا سما یا صاحب بازو کٹے فرات پہ مشکیزہ چھد گیا خود بھی گرے زمین پر ٹھنڈا علم ہوا عباس قتل ہوتے عباس قتل ہوتے رہے ہیں کہاں کہاں یا صاحب زمان ہے آپ کی نگاہوں میں عاشور کا سما یا صاحب زمان بالوں میں تشن کام کے صحرا کی گرد ہے رستا ہے خون زخم سے چہرے پہ درد ہے لپٹا ہوا ہے باپ کے لپٹا ہوا ہے باپ کے سینے سے بے زبان یا صاحب زمان ہے آپ کی نگاہوں میں عاشور کا سما یا صاحب لرزا زمین اور فلک تھے دہائی سے، 70 قدم تھی دور بہن اپنے بھائی سے، پیاسے گلے پہ شاہ کے، پیاسے گلے پہ شاہ کے خنجر ہوا رواں، یا صاحب زمان ہے آپ کی نگاہوں میں عاشور کا سماں، یا صاحب خیمے جلے تو لٹ گیا اہل حرم کا گھر، تسبیح جیسے ٹوٹ کے گرتی ہے خاک پر، بکھری تھی ایسے دشت میں، بکھری تھی ایسے دشت میں زہرا کی بیٹیاں، یا صاحب زمان ہے آپ کی نگاہوں میں عاشور کا سماں، یا صاحب جو ساتھ ماؤں بہنوں کے دربار تک گیا، وہ صبر سے تھکا نہیں، ہر ظلم تھک گیا، تم کو صدائے دیتی ہے، تم کو صدائے دیتی ہے عابد کی بیڑیاں، یا صاحب زمان ہے آپ کی نگاہوں میں عاشور کا سماں، یا صاحب زمان خون رو رہے ہیں آپ بھی غیبت میں یا امام، کب آ کے لیں گے فاطمہ زہرا کا انتقام، کب سے ہے انتظار میں، کب سے ہے انتظار میں پہلو شکی سماں، یا صاحب زمان ہے آپ کی نگاہوں میں عاشور کا سماں، یا صاحب زمان ایک روز میں اجڑ گیا زہرا کا گلستان، یا حسین
صلی اللہ علیہ یا رسول اللہ، السلام علیکم یا نبی